to the 2022-2023 Owego-Appalachian Central School District budget presentation. This budget presentation was given to the Board of Education on March 7th, 2022. My name is Corey Green and I'm the Superintendent of Schools, and I will be taking you through the initial look at our budget. When we build our budget, our goals and objectives are to maintain and add high-quality programs and services for students, control and reduce our costs wherever possible, stay within the tax levy limit of New York State's property tax cap, and find balance within the school district's needs and what the community values. To be forward-thinking into future budgeting challenges from a short and long-term perspective, and to manage district resources effectively in order to support educational program excellence. In our budget at a glance, our total revenue budget you can see this year is over $52 million with an increase of about 5.88%. The total expense budget, again, is increased by about 6.29%. So you can see how closely those numbers are together. Our total state aid has increased significantly this year from about $24 million to $27 million roughly, which is about a 13.5% increase in state aid. That is primarily due to the fully funding of foundation aid that we will see for the next 2 years. Property tax levy will remain the same. We plan on no increase in this stage of the budget process. So the property tax levy will remain the same as it was last year. So this will be the second year in a row that we have been at 0% for the property tax levy increase. Our reserves and fund balance, we do not plan to use any of those at this point. And our current gap in this budget process initially is a little over $200,000. Projected revenue, when you look at revenue sources, there's really a couple of different pieces to take into account. So we have our tax levy that is a taxpayer support of about $17.9 million. And we have our state aid that is roughly $27 million, which again was about a $3.2 million increase this year. And then we have other revenues of about $5 million. And some of those revenues include pilots, payment in lieu of taxes that would be included there. So the total revenue budget, again, is up 5.88% with a total number of about $2.9 million. However, important to note that if we were to go out at 1%, 1% it equals about $179,000 in revenue to the district. So once again, if we were to go out at 1%, hypothetically, it would be $179,000 roughly for the levy. So in looking at projected expenditures, there's really a few things that drive the expenditures. We have salaries, benefits, and then debt service. So if we look at our instructional salaries, they're up about $677,000. Non-instructional are up about $368,000. If we go across the board here, the benefits, which is health insurance and everything else included in the benefits line, is an increase of about $560,000. And then our debt service, you can see, has increased significantly to about $1.4 million. And the reason that debt service has increased is due to the payments, building aid payments that we'll now be making on the capital project that we're currently in the process of completing. However, important to note that on the other side of the revenue, we also receive significant funding in building aid, which we receive about 87 to 88 cents on the dollar when there is a capital project that takes place in the district. So that line there really becomes almost a wash because we're going to receive most of that funding back in building aid from the state. Total expenditure budget is $52.9 million. It's a 6.29%. It is a $3.1 million increase to budget. And again, currently we have a gap of about $200,000 that we'll continue to work towards throughout the budgeting process. State aid, as you can see, foundation aid, you'll see the number here at the top, went from 14.9 to 16.6. That's a total of about $1.6 million. And again, the district has not received full foundation aid for several years that it's been owed. This is the first commitment that we've seen from the state for fully funding the foundation aid formula for school districts for at least the next 2 years. Our BOCES is up about $335,000. And then again, as you look at the second to the bottom line of building aid, as I talked about in the last slide, of $1.4 million in debt service payment. However, we're receiving building aid of $1.3 million coming in from the state, from a state aid standpoint. So total state aid is up significantly. This is the first increase that we've seen in a long time at this amount of roughly 13.5% and about $3.2 million. Some miscellaneous sources of revenue, as I mentioned previously, payments in lieu of taxes, pilots. These are for businesses that come into our region, and there are pilot agreements that are made between the state, the IDA, and so the school district has several pilots currently, and we are up about $118,000 in revenue from pilots within the community. And these pilots are, again, they're payment in lieu of taxes, so they're structured tax plans for companies to pay less in the beginning and then catch up a little bit later. But ultimately, they're giving some deals to come into the community with their business in order to be able to receive a pilot. Total miscellaneous resources at the bottom you can see is down about $338,000. And one of the things I will note here is the Federal CARES Act line. Those are funds that we received previously and were in need of spending those funds last year and did. However, those funds are gone now, so that's why you see that decrease there from year to year. Property tax reserves and fund balance reserves. So we currently, our fund balance appropriation has remained pretty steady here at about $1.6 million. We have an additional $900,000 of fund balance appropriation for assisting in current capital projects for things like site work that some of state aid does not support. And then, as you can see, again, we have no allocated reserves in this budget as well. So our property taxes will remain flat at zero. We plan for no increase in this budget year. Revenue for 2022-2023. Proposed budget calls for a 0% increase, as I've spoken to a few different times here on the tax levy. No use of employee retirement or unemployment reserves at the moment. And state aid is never finalized until there's the final approval of the state legislature and the governor's proposal as the budget's being adopted. So foundation aid, again, being fully funded in the current budget is very supportive from a state aid standpoint. Closing the gap, these are options for the board to consider moving forward. We could reduce some additional positions through attrition. We could reduce some operation or programmatic budget lines. We could increase property taxes of about 1.13%, which would be roughly $202,000, which is the current gap. Again, we don't plan to do that. Use ERS reserves to fill the gap. And then foundation aid or expense-driven aid may increase potentially in the final budget. So these are some options to think about for the board. We are in a really good place in terms of the budget process at the moment with a very small balance that remains within a gap of the budget for 2022-2023. Tax cap levy calculation, again, this will remain flat. However, I will explain a little bit of some driving factors of the tax cap levy calculation. So if you look at the tax-based growth factor, that has increased. It is now 1.0083. Receivable pilots in 2021-2022 were $3.9 million. Our capital levy was $472,985. And then if you look at the allowable growth factor, shows 2%. And you've heard a lot about the tax cap levy calculation for several years, that many believe it is a 2% cap, which ultimately it is not. That is what the state has told people. But when you use the formula and calculations come out of the formula, many times you end up over the 2%. And the 2% is driven by the consumer price index in this calculation. So again, tax levy limit this year, if you're looking at a $17.88 million, and then a capital levy piece of plus $473,527. So our maximum allowable tax levy without voter approval greater than 60% could potentially be $18.3 million, which could be upwards of a 2.58% increase, and that is roughly about $461,000 more than from last year's levy. Once again, our plan at the moment is to go out at zero. So that, however, is the allowable levy amount of 2.58%. If you look at our budget and property tax cap history, I want to commend the board on being fiscally responsible for so many years. Done an outstanding job of being able to stay primarily within the tax cap levy limit. And if you look over the past 6 years, we're averaging roughly about 1.2% increase. And in 2021, 2022, we were at 0%. And again, in 2022, 2023, we are proposing again to be at 0%. Included in this budget, obviously, are to maintain current programs and grow wherever possible. Smaller class sizes at our elementary levels, growth in our CTE programs, and always our enrichment programs. We continue to expand those programs throughout the year and throughout the summer. Continue to implement our career pathways and service learning opportunities through our cooperative agreements with our local business partners, and provide more internship expansion for students within our local business partners, and then the opportunity for increased amounts of college credits for students to take advantage of in our high school. The implementation of our Career Center at OFA, our College and Career Center, will be the center of our Owego Free Academy High School. This will be is in development currently and will be up and running completely in September. We're currently working with industry partners and bringing them in here and collaborating. We also have the Chamber of Commerce, who's located in our high school. So we have a opportunity here with our College and Career Center to really bring stakeholders of the community together to allow opportunities for students to learn about different colleges and what the experience is and what it takes to get to particular colleges and what things that students might be interested in studying. And also from a career side, exposing kids to different careers, bringing in career mentors from the community and mentoring students on what different careers look like and what they can expect to experience. So there'll be opportunities in there such as students to work on resume building, students to interview skills, public speaking, and then searching, obviously, several different career opportunities and what they would need to prepare them for that. So our budget timeline moving forward, March 7th, 2022, we propose the initial budget to the Board of Education. April 18th is the final budget approval in the process. May 4th, budget information session will take place at Appalachian Elementary School. And May 9th will be the official budget hearing by the Board of Education. And then May 17th, 2022 is our annual budget vote. Thank you very much for listening.